Leaders for a Better Community has one mission: to improve the quality of our lives. We believe that every child deserves a quality education, healthcare should be affordable, every job should pay a living wage, and our neighborhood should be safe and secure. Your input on these issues is very important to us, and we'd love to hear from you. To share your thoughts, visit us at lbcmke.org. Join our fight for a better quality of life. That's lbcmke.org, paid for by Leaders for a Better Community.
The worst president in history's billion-dollar campaign is failing. Trump is behind in the polls, losing in places he should win, and barely holding on everywhere else. It's looking good, right? Wrong. This isn't over. We're fighting against Donald Trump. We know he'll lie, cheat, suppress the vote, stoke racial hate and economic chaos to win. Trump is counting on you to relax, to stop fighting, to think this election is over. It's not over until his enablers are defeated. We can't take anything for granted. Register, volunteer, get your absentee ballot, vote early, stay in this fight. Your vote and your hard work make all the difference because you know the choice we face: America or Trump. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Call in or text live 414-395-0484. Thought-provoking talk radio covering all topics from local to national and everything in between. It may not be what you expect to hear, but we will definitely give you what you need to know. That's The Forum, exclusively on Facebook Live, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Podcasts available on our website, theforum2.com. Check us out. Good morning. Welcome to the program. Today is Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. So, right, what'd you guys think? Night one of the Democratic National Convention that was technically supposed to be held in our home city, the home of the Forum, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I was entertaining commentary in the group last night and trying to get a sense from people of what they thought of the first night of the convention. And I'll admit, it got better as it went on because I had to get used to the format. It really was a big Zoom conference call. Those of you that have been working remotely and have become very familiar with the Zoom app in which you can video conference, it was a lot of that. It didn't really seem, these are just my thoughts, it didn't really seem cohesive. It was just, they showed like a dude, like a farmer in Ohio, and then a small business owner in his business. And those are real everyday Americans. And of course, that's what the Democratic Party prides itself on. It is the party of the people, but it just didn't seem well produced. Fair enough. Congresswoman Gwen Moore was the most energy and the most excitement that personally I witnessed, and I'm sure some of you will agree with that, but that's just her personality. Andrew Cuomo, he hit it out of the park. He was impassioned. He also reiterated the theme of last night's telethon for the ASPCA. Didn't Eva Longoria make it seem like they're trying to raise money for pets that need homes? It just seemed very childhood cancer telethon-ish. I have a lot of complaints, but let me tell you why I have a lot of complaints. We got played. The city of Milwaukee, we lost a huge opportunity to showcase who we are and what we are. We could have showcased the diversity of this city. We had an opportunity, but because of the coronavirus pandemic, we cannot have large in-person rallies, and I think as some kind of a consolation prize to having a virtual convention, because there was very little mention of Milwaukee. What I wanted to see, and of course I never get to see what I want to see, is every backdrop, especially of national speakers, former presidential candidates, for there to be a different backdrop that was a scene from the city of Milwaukee. Because if the convention was actually here, think about the summer of protests that we had here. All of that could have been featured. People could have gotten to understand the personality of our city. So at the very least, they could have shown images that are very unique to the city of Milwaukee to make it kind of seem like it was supposed to be here. But after maybe 30 minutes, there was just no mention of the city that was supposed to be hosting the convention. And it's not even like there's, unless I'm wrong, and I very well could be, Milwaukee is not even like a central hub of all of the media and the technology. Like, I don't think anything is even centralized here. I could be wrong, but we're an afterthought. And that kept echoing through my mind, because if you're just tuning into the convention, you got to keep in mind every moment someone is tuning in for the first time. They wouldn't know that we were the city that was in a very contentious battle to host the convention. But it wasn't just about what we can showcase as a city. It isn't about that. You know, having a convention is a very strategic political play. So in 2016, it was in Philadelphia because, right, Pennsylvania is a battleground state. Philadelphia, with its high number of African-American voters, which ultimately didn't turn out for Hillary Clinton, could decide an election. The city your convention is in should speak to the voters in that particular city. It should fire them up. It should motivate them. So with that theme in mind, and maybe that's like a secondary theme to a convention to really encourage and engage the voters of the town that the convention is being held in. If you're from the city of Milwaukee and you watch that convention at any moment in time, you didn't feel engaged as a Milwaukee voter. You didn't. It was a great national message. And again, this is probably me being overly critical and throwing lots of shade at night one of the convention / telethon to raise money for displaced animals. Good morning, everybody. So what did you guys think about the convention? I've got a couple of stories here about, of course, Donald Trump's response, which he tweeted. Donald Trump was also in Oshkosh yesterday, which is not customary for the opposite party. When one party is having their convention, the other party lays low. They give a level of respect to the party that is having their convention. Donald Trump, in true Donald Trump fashion, he was in Oshkosh yesterday. And then I believe his son, Don Jr., is also going to be in the state of Wisconsin. So expect the Trump campaign to have events throughout the state of Wisconsin during our convention here in Milwaukee. What Trump won't do is he won't step foot in the city of Milwaukee. Because has Trump ever, he has come to Milwaukee. He came to Milwaukee in, when was he here? 2018? I think he came during Summerfest, where they had to block off the freeway and it screwed everything up. But he doesn't really come to Milwaukee very often. At some point, do I want to waste time on it? Chief Alfonso Morales, who I've been saying, you guys know that, and I hate saying I told you so, but I told you so. Chief Morales is a Trumper. You know how embarrassing that is for us? You know how embarrassing that was for the mayor Tom Barrett, who went to bat for Chief Morales for him to get appointed to a full term as chief, to find out after the fact, after Morales signed his contract promoting him to chief, that he was a Donald Trump supporter. The chief, the former chief, is not chief anymore. The outgoing police captain, because Alfonso Morales, who used to be our chief, was demoted. He was at the Trump rally in Oshkosh. That's just, so that's a slap in our faces. It's also a slap in the mayor's face. The former police chief was at a MAGA rally. So he's in the process of retiring, Alfonso Morales, if he has not already. And what's the first public event he does? Of all the public events that Alfonso Morales could have done, what's the first one he does? He goes to Oshkosh to a Trump rally. Whoa. So I'm going to say this. Whoever the next chief of police is, we need to find out what their affiliations are before they get appointed chief. And that's not asking too much. Can you imagine how difficult that would have been to work with Chief Alfonso Morales? Let's say we would have had a normal convention. 50,000 people, parties all over the place, a big celebration of Milwaukee, celebrating Democratic policies and politics, and celebrating defeating Donald Trump in November. Imagine if we would have had a real serious convention and the security protocols, including the Secret Service, because Joe Biden is under Secret Service protection, as is his family, and having to work with other law enforcement officials, all being coordinated by Alfonso Morales, because he would have had a big stake in what security would have been like, because it would have been his rank and file officers that would have been enforcing this security perimeter. But for the DNC brass to be working with a Trump supporter that was the former Milwaukee police chief, it's just like even when we try to do stuff right in this city, we just don't do it right. Good morning, Vanessa Garrett, L.A. Thomas, good morning to you. Star, Xavier Mom, good morning. Star, Cassandra D, good morning. Charles Reeves says, good morning, all. Udell Harris, good morning, my brother. Good morning, right back at you, Udell. Mary Braun, good morning. Sherwin, good morning, everyone. Leah Delaney says, good morning. Francine Hale checking in with her, good morning. Carmen Patterson, good morning. L.A. Thomas says, yeah, Eva made it like a 10-cent a day commercial. For just 10 cents a day, you can help a Democrat get elected. We know these are trying times, but with your donation, you can get a picture of your very own Democrat that you helped get elected. Now let's talk to some other Democrats who are sad and suffering. You had to have a somber opening to the convention because we are in a pandemic. And was not complaining yesterday about, oh, they better not be over there partying. This is no time to celebrate. Yeah, it's no time to celebrate because you can't be in our city. But it was just, will y'all please admit, so I'm not out here by myself, it was real sleepy. It was just, and then Eva would ask for 10 cents for adopt a Democrat, sponsor a poor, starving Democrat. And then they go to some random person doing a Zoom call. And then you had Amy Klobuchar. I think I enjoy conversation on social media and on Twitter more so than the actual convention. We're going to get to Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama needs her own section of conversation. She just, I mean, imagine Michelle Obama, Democratic nominee. And here's what I would afford to Michelle Obama if she's never going to do it. Because she said in her speech, I hate politics. Which I really wish she didn't say that. But you know, when Michelle Obama said, I hate politics, you know what that means? That means, hey, everybody, stop asking me to run for president. Because when she said she hates politics, she made it a part of her speech. Michelle, we know you don't like it. But we want you to do this for the country. She said, I hate politics. I'm like, oh, that's rude. But Michelle Obama, let's say she was a Democratic nominee, which, no. She would have Joe Biden would pick her to be a part of his cabinet, which she would probably still decline before she would ever run for president. But if Michelle Obama was a Democratic nominee, Andrew Cuomo could be a great running mate. I like Andrew Cuomo. He showed leadership when the country had none. He was the briefings and the press conferences that I tuned into. This is like in April and in May when the coronavirus in New York was just staggering. He was the guy that's, that believed in fact and believed in science and said, here's what we're going to do today and here's how we're going to tackle this problem. He was very steadfast in his leadership. Eileen Seeger, good morning, Eileen. Crystal Eve Farinelli says, I agree. Eileen Seeger says, I thought it fell flat and did not transition well. Yeah, there really weren't any transitions. Because if you think about this for a moment, and I don't know what the dollar amount is, but the Democrats probably had tens of millions of dollars to put on this production because when they were originally fundraising for it, and they fundraised for the convention for 4 full years. It's a very expensive event. It's a lot of different moving parts. It is a very large, coordinated international dance in which you have all of these different people and you got to coordinate all these things. And then the musical act. Who was the guy at the end? Did you see the musical act at the end? He did a twirl. I didn't understand. Billy Porter? Willie Porter? Anyways, it's a very expensive production, a convention is, and maybe they had tens of millions of dollars, maybe more than that. It could have flowed better. maybe you hire like a Hollywood producer to, because if you know the thing is going to be entirely virtual, and the world has gotten used to doing things virtually, whether you're using Zoom or you're using Skype or using some other teleconferencing means, and then you're going to put that on national and if not international television. Because I will say the one thing about the convention, you could watch it everywhere. It was streaming online. There was a Facebook Live feed that I posted. If you have a streaming device, if you have a Fire Stick, if you have a Roku, you could just type in DNC and then all the different ways to watch would come up. So they certainly made it accessible digitally, or you could just watch it on one of the cable news shows. They were broadcasting it live as well, at least from 8 p.m. until 10 p.m. Some of the other smaller events you probably could see by watching C-SPAN. So you could see it everywhere, but it was just the production of it wasn't becoming, number one, of a convention, number two, of the times that we're in, number three, it wasn't becoming of the city that was supposed to host it, and that is the city of Milwaukee. Because Milwaukee would not have done it that way. We would have done it differently. We'd have showed people twerking. We'd have showed Nitty. We'd have showed somebody spilling beer on somebody. Vanessa Garrett, notice you did mention Michelle Obama. She brought the message home. Calvin Lee, good morning to you, sir. Hey, Una Vanderval, good to see you. Marlon Pitchford says, what up, people? What up, Marlon? Lisa Muller, or Mueller, or Miller, says good morning. Sherwin says good morning to you, too. Hey, Jason Fields, good morning, sir. Leah Delaney says, LOL, exclamation point. Calvin Lee, it is a ghost town in our downtown area. It is, man. I took a ride Sunday night, technically the night before the convention, because I didn't know if people were actually going to show up, if there were going to be some media here, if there were going to be some guests coming into the city of Milwaukee, because I know a bunch of people booked Airbnbs in Milwaukee, and maybe, I don't know, maybe some of those people said, hey, well, I already have the Airbnb booked, maybe I'll come to Milwaukee anyway. But when I rode around downtown Sunday night just to check out the area in which the convention was supposed to be held, there's a huge security perimeter between 4th Street, 6th Street, Kilbourne, and Michigan. So like 8 to 10 square blocks. And there was just nobody. Because the night before the convention, you expect people drunk and screaming. Well, that's just a normal night in Milwaukee anyway. But it was eerily quiet. Downtown is also, even during the day, it's very, very quiet. Not much going on. Tish Nelson says Grand Rising. Grand Rising to you too, Tish. Eileen Seeger. See, Eileen, this is where we disagree. Billy Porter video was the best laugh I had all day. What was that? I cannot unsee that. Oh, I thought you were going to give it a compliment. You know, am I expecting too much for them to have been more of a Milwaukee theme? Because we've had a tough year in Milwaukee. And our year has not been tougher than other cities. I get it. But some credit should have been shown, more credit. Every backdrop. Because you know you can change your backdrops on Zoom. You can have like palm trees and you can have different whatever. They didn't have any Milwaukee backdrops. They didn't show the Home Bridge. They didn't show the Summerfest grounds. They did have a really awkward drone footage perspective of Governor Kasich from Ohio. Did you see that? Because he represents the Republicans that are going to vote for Trump, and there were a number of them. I think we found every Republican in the country that was like an ex-Trump staffer or a disaffected Trump Republican that all came out and said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. One guy was like, even though I disagree with everything the Democrats stand for forever and always, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because something is good for the country. So we found all 13 Republicans that are not going to vote for Donald Trump. MV Skokie Sabali. Good morning. Marlon Pitchford says, it was sleepy. I fell asleep until Michelle. Why was Gwen Moore yelping? Gwen was just excited because she is the congresswoman for the convention, right? She represents the Wisconsin Center and the Fiserv Forum. That is in her congressional district. And Gwen is just, if you've ever talked to Gwen before, when she's real fired up and happy. I interviewed her a number of times over the years, and whenever I interview Gwen, I have to get a good night's sleep because Gwen she's very energetic. I think she was genuinely happy to be in that room by herself, welcoming people to the city of Milwaukee. I think Gwen provided energy, but that was also an exhibition of her personality. That was Gwen Moore at her finest. It was. Kari Phelps says good morning. Okay, I got an analysis here. Maybe you guys will agree or disagree. Hits and misses from night one of the Democratic National Convention. You know what? Before I do that, why don't we do the rundown of some of the other events that are happening today? Today is Tuesday, August 18th. From noon until 1:30 p.m., I'd imagine all of these times are Eastern time. There is the Rural Caucus meeting, which you can tune into. If you go to demconvention.com, you can get a rundown of all of the events, because there may be particular meetings or caucuses that you may have an interest in. There's a lot of diversity amongst the Democrats, and they, of course, are offering a lot of different subject matters and issue areas for the diversity of the Democratic Party. So the first event today, from noon until 1:30 p.m., is the Rural Caucus meeting. From 12 p.m. until 2 p.m. is the Seniors Council meeting. From 12 until 2, also, the LGBTQ caucus meeting. 12:30 until 7:30 p.m., literally all day, the Campaign Academy 2020 organizing. From 12:30 until 3 p.m., the Muslim Delegates Assembly. From 1 p.m. until 3 p.m., the Small Business Council meeting. From 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., the Disability Council meeting. From 3 p.m. until 5 p.m., Jewish American Community meeting. From 3:30 until 5 p.m., the Youth Council meeting. 4 to 6 p.m., Native American Caucus meeting. 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., Council on the Environmental and Climate Crisis. From 5 p.m. until 7 p.m., the Veteran and Military Families Council meeting. The pre-show starts at 7 p.m. Behind the Rhyme presents Your Voice, Your Vote. Now, I'm going to click on the little plus right here so I can get more information on exactly what the hell that is. Behind the Rhyme presents Your Voice, Your Vote, a live special feature covering a simulcast of the Democratic National Convention starting at 8 p.m. and tune in after the convention for a post-show panel followed by a DJ set with Vashti. Is that? Don't forget to tune in to the DJ set. Who picks the music? Does anybody know who picks the musical acts? Is it Nancy Pelosi? Did Joe Biden personally pick the musical acts for the convention? I'm just asking for a friend. Featuring appearances, panels, and performances from artists and personalities who want to talk about the issues at stake this November. Watch live exclusively on Twitch and jump into the chat to let your voice be heard. No thanks. So the convention, day 2 of the convention officially starts at 9 p.m. All times are Eastern, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. And what do we have here? The keynote address will be let me give you more details here. Join us tonight, Tuesday, August 18th from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time for the second night of the 2020 Democratic National Convention, where we'll hear from leaders and experts, the veterans and activists, all those who seek to unite, not divide, and who step up, not back down from a fight over what's right. Featuring former acting U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, former Secretary of State John Kerry, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rep. Lisa Blunt Rochester, former President Bill Clinton, and former Second Lady Dr. Jill Biden. The keynote address is not saying who is giving the keynote address. Tune in Tuesday, August 18th to hear our 2020 Democratic National Convention keynote address. Roll Call Across America will be held from 9 p.m. until 11 p.m. Tune in Tuesday, August 18th for our Roll Call Across America, which will take viewers to all 57 states and territories. We'll hear from voters, delegates, parents, teachers, small business owners, activists, and leaders in the Democratic Party as they officially cast votes to nominate Joe Biden to become the next president of the United States. Okay, so that's night 2 I don't know, maybe Bill Clinton, Dr. Joe Biden, perhaps, the highlights of night two. For a bit of irony, those of you that are interested in such things, I went to Donald Trump's website because I wanted to see if they listed the events that the Republicans and the Make America Great Again fascism movement, what events they were going to be having during the convention. And you know the first thing I saw when I went to Donald Trump's website? You know the first thing I saw? What do you think the first thing I saw was? First of all, everything is for sale. Click here to buy this, and they got a black guy with tattoos wearing a Trump hat. It's just eerie. But the first thing that you see is a pop-up. Request your mail-in ballot. Or request your absentee ballot, rather. Donald Trump, who is trying to defund the post office so that mail is slowed, so that your ballots may not be postmarked in time to count. The first thing you see, I couldn't believe it, so I had to click off the website because I thought that had to have been a mistake. Here, let me actually make sure I'm not crazy here. Let me go back to the website because I just couldn't. Where is it? Did I close it? Where Trump website at here? Type it in. DonaldTrump.com. Autocomplete. Request an absentee ballot. Right when you go to his website. Request an absentee ballot. So request a mail-in ballot. Make sure you're ready. So when you click on it, so when you go to the website, first thing you see is request an absentee ballot. Then you click on that little link. Make sure you're ready to vote. And then it's the first, you enter your first name, you enter your last name, which I'm not going to do. Okay, actually, maybe I will. How about, who's a guy from Jodeci? Devontae. And his last name was Swang. S-W-A-N-G. Oh, and then they want your residential address, your city. I'm not giving you all that. I'm not going to send an absentee ballot to Devontae from Jodeci. How ironic is that, right? The first thing you see when you go to Donald Trump's website is request an absentee ballot. At the same time, he's trying to make sure that absentee ballots that are sent via mail are not postmarked in time. Get back to some of your comments here. Henry Leonard says, like the message. Yes, Gwen has the energy. We need that always. You know, because Eva Longoria, if her energy would have matched Gwen Moore's, it would have been a little more upbeat. But at the same time, you got to pay respect to people who have lost during the pandemic and some of the first responders and some of the medical professionals. Like, you have to be somber for them and for their speeches and them giving their tales of what is going on during the pandemic and what their lives have been like. But at the same time, there needs to be a level of energy there because having the convention in Milwaukee, and we better get it in 2024, so I don't know who we got to talk to. Anybody know Alex Lasry personally? I think he might be mad at me. Alex Lasry is the vice president of the Milwaukee Bucks. We worked together on some things some years ago, and I don't think he's mad at me, but whatever. Somebody talk to Alex Lasry and see if he can get the convention back here, or our good friend, former county executive Chris Abley, who was probably more instrumental in bringing that convention here than Mayor Tom Barrett, but that's a whole nother conversation. Victoria McGee says, Bernie combed his hair, so that happened. Listen. Bernie looked all right, didn't he? Bernie Sanders, if you look at pictures of him when he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont 40 years ago, hair still messed up. Just Bernie Sanders, we need to have democratic socialism. His hair is always, but he combed his hair like he licked his hand and he laid his hair down flat. So it's a big deal for Bernie Sanders, and I'm glad that he spoke because there are still people that are clinging to their delegate status for Bernie, and I believe that every piece of Bernie Sanders' agenda. I didn't disagree with what he wanted to do. What he wanted to do was fantastic. Everything from forgiving student loans to public colleges and universities are free to Medicare for all, meaning that you can go see a doctor for little to no cost, regardless of whether you need to see a specialist or regardless of you just need to get routine medical care, all of those are fabulous ideas, but you got to keep in mind, everything that Bernie Sanders said, the president couldn't do. Everything that Bernie Sanders said, and he encapsulated an entire generation of young Democrats, except they're not Democrats, because when they supported Bernie, they could push the Democratic establishment aside. You need the Democratic establishment to provide support for your campaign so you can win. That's the part that I didn't get. So by supporting Bernie, people thought they were pushing the Democratic establishment aside because they don't like the status quo. That makes a lot of sense. But for Bernie Sanders to be able to implement all of those ideas that he was mesmerizing and hypnotizing people with, he would have to operate like Donald Trump. He would have to operate unilaterally, and presidents don't do that. That's why I've always said that there was a similarity between the indoctrinated Donald Trump supporter and the Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders fanboy or fangirl. They have these woes, these fears, these economic woes and fears. And the ultra-left progressive Democratic Socialist movement is a white movement. Yes, there's some brown people in it, but most of those people, anyone who will call themselves a Democratic Socialist or someone who's that far on the left, like 90% of them are white. Just the same demographics as Donald Trump supporters. And so they're putting a lot of hope in a leader that speaks their language, that speaks to their anxieties and fears. Trump is just doing it from the right. Bernie did it from the left. And what happens is when Bernie Sanders gets all these people interested and engaged and going to rallies and knocking on doors and volunteering, and then when Bernie Sanders hits that roadblock to where he cannot be supported by the traditional Democratic establishment that will raise the money that he would need to be competitive in all 50 states, when Bernie Sanders doesn't make it, all of those people that were once very interested and very fired up and very motivated, they all fall by the wayside because they then want every Democratic candidate everywhere to adopt Bernie Sanders' philosophy. There's actually good news in all of that. You don't want a president to have that kind of unilateral policy or power to implement policy because it's just going to be another Donald Trump. For Bernie Sanders to do all of those things, he would have to usurp Congress. And we don't want presidents to do that. A president can veto stuff, sign stuff, and appoint people. That's kind of, and like go on Air Force One and fly places. And raise money for other Democrats is what we expected Bernie Sanders to do. But Bernie Sanders doesn't do that. He would not have been a team player. And that's problematic. And so all of those people that were so enthralled by Bernie Sanders, they don't call themselves Democrats. They aren't team players because they wanted Bernie Sanders to run roughshod over the Constitution by just implementing all of those things that Bernie Sanders was campaigning on. But you know where those things can come to fruition? You know where some of the Democratic Socialist agenda, everything from environmentalism and climate to social justice and racial justice and legalizing marijuana, that stuff can be done in your state where you do have much more power to implement those things. We cannot wait for someone like Bernie Sanders and the federal government to implement the ultimate wish list. You know, there are states that have programs that if you teach, let's say, in public schools for a number of years, they'll forgive your student loans. You know, you have states that have already legalized marijuana. Do you know you have states that have a variety of different programs where public colleges and universities are pretty close to free as it is? So some of the things that people wanted Bernie Sanders to do as president can be done locally. Marcelia Nicholson, the chairwoman of our Milwaukee County Board, the first, and I would say the first black woman and also the youngest chairwoman of our Milwaukee County Board, is a Democratic Socialist, meaning at that local level of government, the top legislator in Milwaukee County government is a Democratic Socialist. And she gets to work in concert with the youngest and first African-American county executive. So some of those things, some of the things in the Democratic Socialist agenda are really, really good for marginalized communities. But if those same people that put all of that effort and energy behind Bernie Sanders put a tenth of that energy into local elections and local politics and local campaigns, we wouldn't need Bernie Sanders. You wouldn't need him because now people are just going to wait till Bernie runs again. Or I wouldn't be shocked if Bernie Sanders primaries Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2024. Bernie's going to run again. But I get real passionate about the whole Bernie thing because at the radio station I worked at last, they all were not only were they Bernie Sanders supporters, they didn't listen to logic nor reason. It's like if Bernie Sanders said it, then clearly it must be true and it can happen. You know how hard it is to be sensible when you're surrounded by people that don't really have any common sense? And I also noticed something else at that previous radio station that I worked at where they fetishized the devil. They had a real eerie fascination with Donald Trump. Almost like a lust for Trump. Now, they were Bernie Sanders supporters, but remember earlier when I said that there isn't much difference in the emotional connections that Bernie Sanders supporters have for Bernie that Donald Trump supporters have for Trump. They're very, very, very similar. So fascism can come from the left or the right, guys. And just because it's a bunch of issues that you agree with, and of course you borrowed too much money when you went to college and you want your student loans forgiven, someone can mesmerize you with that. They can say, we can pay off all your debt for you if you just come on over here and believe everything we believe. That's not realistic. It also isn't democracy. And I don't want to have people take my words as further dividing the nation, but Bernie knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to tear the establishment up. That's what he did. He wanted to do that. And he caused so much division. He barely campaigned for Hillary Clinton. Let's be honest about that. He's better now. But for the first 3 weeks after Hillary Clinton essentially sealed and delivered that she was going to be the Democratic nominee in 2016, Bernie went dark for 3 weeks. He wasn't campaigning for her. And so his supporters, Bernie Sanders supporters, pushed Hillary Clinton off to the side. Now, you can blame black people in Detroit and in Milwaukee and in Philadelphia for lower turnout numbers because it was only 77,000 votes in those 3 states that gave those electoral college delegates to Donald Trump. You can blame black people all you want. You also can blame people that didn't like Hillary Clinton because they were committed to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders did tear apart, for a moment, the fabric of the Democratic Party. Because what he could have said and what he could have reiterated, when Bernie knew the math wasn't in his favor, because he stayed in the 2016 election way too long. It was over for him, but he kept going, didn't he? He just kept going. He learned his lesson this time. He didn't stay in beyond the math in 2020. But in 2016, he stayed in just to cause more havoc, just to shred the democratic system. You think that I'm in love with the democratic system? You think I'm in love with the status quo as a black man? No. But I know you can't just rip it up. You got to work within the confines of it. And once you know the rules of it and the confines and the boundaries of the democratic system, that's when you tear it up. But you don't just run roughshod through it like a bull in a china shop. Bernie Sanders should have said, so I'm going to drop out of the race. This is back in 2016. But I want you to take the same spirit and the same energy and use it on down ballot candidates and encourage your local elected officials to embrace pieces of this agenda. Because if your school board candidates and if your state assembly, state senate candidates, and your county supervisor candidates each take a piece of the Bernie Sanders democratic socialism agenda and they implement it at those separate levels of government, you will be better off. The agenda will be implemented much more quickly, and you won't have to wait for a president. If Bernie Sanders would have gotten elected president, then I swear I'm done with Bernie. But we need to have this conversation because nobody explained it to people. There's still people clinging to some unusual chance that Bernie Sanders may some kind of way clinch the nomination. But this was a conversation that he should have had. He should have redirected that energy to local candidates. Because even if he would have gotten elected president, there's only 9 Democratic socialists in all of government. There's 83,000 elected officials. And unless the number has gone up, we just had some primary elections just most recently. But there was only 9 Democratic socialists out of 83,000 elected officials in the country. And 6 of the 9 were on the Chicago City Council. So even if you have a Democratic Socialist president, they got no support in Congress. None. There's not even a Democratic Socialist caucus. There's not enough of them. It's not enough. And you can't automatically turn Democrats into Democratic Socialists. They're very different people. That's like there's similarities, but there's stark contrast. That's like saying every Republican is a libertarian. Very big difference. Very big difference. Leah Delaney, Miss Klobuchar, Carmen Patterson from the New York Times by Astide W. Herndon and J. Reed Epstein. I'm not going to read that. Oh, maybe I will read it. There will be no official business conducted in Milwaukee. The voting to nominate Mr. Biden and to approve the platform was conducted over email and completed Saturday. The only dignitaries who will be on site in Milwaukee for the convention are the DNC chairman, Tom Perez, and Wisconsin elected officials who will speak, including Ms. Moore, who spoke last night, Mr. Barrett. Was Tom a part of the opening ceremonies of the Democratic Olympics yesterday? Mr. Barrett and Tony Evers, the most important people at the Wisconsin Center, will be in the control room operators. Like, that's terrible. Isn't Mandela Barnes our black lieutenant governor? He's doing something, right? He's leading the delegate roll call, maybe. Mandela has a role. Now, I don't like how they didn't mention him in this. So you got Tom Perez will be here, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who lives here, Tom Barrett, who lives here, and Tony Evers are the only people that will be in person. They got a whole security perimeter for 4 people. I wish black people had that kind of security. Mary Braun, well, we need to generate some positive energy, and Gwen Moore was it. This is what it is. Sorry, we have to make the best of it. I don't like consolation prizes. I don't like, oh, well, this is what we got. I don't like that. I don't like having to settle. I was supposed to be at the DNC. Mary, you and 49,999 other people were supposed to be there. Look, old Sherwin was going to be there. They might not want to let me in, but I know how to get media credentials. I'd have walked in with my little broadcast studio. Hi, Sherwin Hills, checking in for the forum broadcast. I'd have me a little table. I've been interviewing people on the Democratic National Convention red carpet. It would have been a blast, but that's not going to happen. Judy Brown. I thought Eva did a good job hosting last night. I'm looking forward to Tracy Ellis Ross tonight. Maybe Tracy. Oh, so are they having different hosts every night? That would be adding a little variety to the mix. Jasmine Johnson. Good morning, Jasmine. Alex isn't responding to me either. Talking about Alex Lasby, vice president of the Milwaukee Bucks, and never rescheduled the lunch he stood me up for. Sorry, can't help with that one. Well, look, if somebody's going to stand up Jasmine Johnson, then I ain't got no shot. Henry Leonard says, agree with Bernie. If we don't come out in a massive way to end this disaster, our progressive policies, including police and criminal justice reform, economic reform, etc., will be stalled or worse. The message was clear. This is critical, and we cannot afford to have our country, democracy, and constitution decimated by an authoritarian white nationalist. Michelle Obama encapsulated the whole purpose for this election Orange Nero. Can't do this. Time for us to take this country on the right path for the first time for all of us. Thank you, Henry. Tried to read that as articulately as I could. Jason Kern said, this is nonsense. That's a complete thought for you. Jason Kern, the establishment has got to go. Look, Jason, listen, I get it. I do. And Jason, I don't know you, but I would assume that you're probably a Bernie Sanders supporter. And when I talk about, my perspective, my vantage point on Bernie Sanders, it may sound like I'm being very condescending. I'm trying not to be, because I know that there's some people who are having their first dance, their first rodeo with politics because they got inspired by Bernie Sanders back in 2016. So let me be mindful of that. But because it's so many young people who have not seen how policy works and how politics and policy are two totally different things, what you say on the campaign trail is different than what you do when you govern. Campaigns are poetry. Policy and governing is prose. They're very different. There's different rules. There's an entirely different style. You think as a black man in America that I want the status quo to continue? Because the status quo puts its knee on my neck. The status quo fires me quickly. The status quo blames me when a crime was committed. So listen, I don't like the status quo either. But there's a way in which you can operate within it to make systemic changes. But then all of a sudden, when a bunch of people said, oh yeah, we can get free college or we can get free healthcare. And listen, you know, Medicare for all is still going to be private insurance. It's just the government is going to pay for it for you. Same insurance companies. You're still going to go to Blue Cross, Blue Shield, and Assurance Health, and whatever, Wheaton Franciscan. It's the same thing. It's just the government is going to write the check for you. So you're not doing away with private health insurance. You're just doing away with how much they can charge an individual private person. But I want the status quo to disappear as well, because it was status quo to keep and own black people. It was status quo to make sure that black people cannot participate in this democracy, but would go to war for this democracy. So don't tell me and tell us about the status quo. We don't like it either, and we've had a different experience with it. It's just when these young kids borrowed a whole bunch of money to go to college and they couldn't find a job, to them that feels like oppression. No, that's what it's like to be black for 5 minutes of your life. It sucks, doesn't it? Well, I'm glad that you want to upend the status quo. Listen, I do as well, but there's ways in which you do it. And by putting all of your stock in a single leader, I mean, we learned that lesson with Dr. King. Dr. King's message still carries on, but the man that King was, that wanted to upend the status quo and end racism and racial segregation and separation, they killed him. They killed him. Leah Delaney says, agreed. I want to know what Bernie supporters are doing to help their cause during non-election years. I'll bet not much. I got to be careful not to turn this into an anti-Bernie rally, because they're really sensitive. They are. But he did that to them. And he knows he did it. That's why I get so upset, because when I give the reality of how nearly impossible some of those things are to achieve, like in one presidential term, then people get mad at me. Bernie was not clear. He capitalized on the emotion of the angst and the economic woes, which, listen, I see it. I live in the city of Milwaukee. I live in a community that is one economic woe. But did you notice that black people, black culture, prominent black elected officials were not flocking to Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders made the oppression of black people a cornerstone of his campaign? Does that make any sense to anybody except for us? Did Bernie Sanders put the oppression of black people and police brutality and economic inequality, he put that at the cornerstone of his campaign, yet black people were not flocking to Bernie Sanders, because we know we use politics differently. There was a method of operating in this country where white people could get anything they wanted from the government, including loans to buy houses, including the GI Bill, including land through the Homesteader Act, including colleges and universities paid for by the federal government so white European peasants could learn how to farm the land they got for free. So white people could rely on policy to implement Jim Crow. You could rely on policy to implement redlining and segregation because you didn't want Negroes in your neighborhood. Black people have never been able to use policy to exact an agenda for our skin color. So that makes a lot more sense just throughout white American history and white culture, that they want a policymaker to implement their wish list immediately. It took black people 100 years to be able to vote. But Sanders supporters wanted free college in one presidential term. The world don't work that way, boo-boo. That's white supremacy. Thinking if I just support this person right here, they're going to make my health insurance free. And no, you got to work for that. You got to work for that when there's no election. But, I'm just over here being angry because the convention is not in my city. Crystal Eve Farinelli, she says, I really hope the DNC covers those uncomfortable conversations like ICE, the relations between China and America, the relations between the Middle East and America, the Native Americans who are suffering as well as the Black Lives Matter protests, etc. I feel they should use this time to cover important topics, not just COVID. So good, Crystal. Thank you for bringing that up. So in the individual caucus meetings, and I read a list of those a little while ago, specific demographics within the Democratic tent will have breakout sessions. Now, they're all going to be virtual, but to discuss those issues. Will they take the national, international broadcast of the convention to cover those issues? They probably will not, because they need to have this big tent message. But there are some breakdowns specifically by demographic groups. So there's a Disability Council, Small Business Council, Muslim Delegates Assembly, the LGBTQ caucus meeting, the Rural Caucus. Wait a minute, where's the Black Caucus at? Hold on now. Am I not seeing, did I miss it? Let me go to yesterday, Monday, August 17th. If y'all didn't have a Black Caucus meeting, so yesterday they had a Hispanic Caucus meeting. They had a Campaign Academy yesterday. They had a Labor Council meeting. They had an AAPI caucus meeting. This was yesterday. Oh, they had a Black Caucus meeting yesterday from 2 until 4 p.m. Let me see what they talked about. The Black Caucus, which is one of the DNC's official constituency caucuses, will meet on Monday, August 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and will be open to delegates and the public. And then there's a little link where you can watch the live stream. Because, I was going to have a fit if the Democrats didn't have a Black Caucus meeting. All right, let's see what we got here. What does CNN have to say about the convention? The first night of the 2020 Democratic National Convention is in the books. As expected, it was a different looking and sounding production from years past, as the ongoing coronavirus pandemic kept the vast majority of speakers away from the actual arena in Milwaukee. Nonetheless, the show went on, and every minute below was chronicled. The first hit they have is Michelle Obama. The two most gifted speakers in the Democratic Party are the Obamas. Former First Lady Michelle Obama proved that again on Monday night with a powerful speech that hit at the core of what we believe are the most glaring personality flaws in Donald Trump, a complete lack of empathy. Quote, "That's not just disappointing, it's downright infuriating," she said at one point. Michelle Obama also offered up her unique perspective on what it actually takes to be a president, how the rigors of the job reveal true character. Perhaps most surprisingly from Michelle Obama, who, like her husband, has generally resisted taking on Trump in aggressive terms, the tone of her speech was frank and at times harsh about Trump's total lack of qualifications to do the job which he currently holds. Quote, "Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country," she said. In the most powerful moment of her speech, he has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he clearly is in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. Another hit they listed, which also, this was a very good segment of last night's convention. Kristen Urquiza, the daughter of an Arizona man who lost his life to COVID-19, delivered the single most powerful moment of the first hour of the 2-hour convention program, and the single most powerful line about her father. Only his only pre-existing condition was trusting Donald Trump, and for that, he paid with his life. Wow, that's a big one. Andrew Cuomo, also listed as one of the hits. Former 2020 candidates that spoke last night was a hit. Bernie Sanders also listed as a hit. The Vermont senator did what the Biden team needed him to do. He acknowledged the differences between the two men, especially on health care, but pivoted to note how much they agree on and how the threat from Trump was so fundamental that differences amongst Democrats are not worth dwelling on. Will there be some Sanders supporters who stay home rather than vote for the brand of Democratic politics Biden represents? Sure. But Sanders didn't make things any worse with that speech. Plus, how can you argue with a background of chopped wood for a speech? I didn't even notice that. The national anthem, they have that listed as one of the hits. Kids singing, dressed in red, white, and blue shirts. Oh, you bet. The national anthem was an emotional high point for the first 45 minutes of the convention. I thought it was corny. Sorry, it was corny. It was cheesy. And they had, like, when they showed the big screen of all the different kids singing. Some of them weren't even singing. Did you see them? They were just standing there. John Prine, as someone who has loved, this is the person who's writing the article, he said he has loved John Prine's music for decades. I don't even know who John Prine is. Hearing his voice singing "I Remember Everything" to commemorate all those who have lost their lives to coronavirus was a high point. Unfortunately, It also reminded the author that we lost John to COVID this spring. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I just didn't know who that guy was. Alice Cooper. This can't be the Alice Cooper I'm thinking of. Listed as a hit? When Wisconsin Representative Gwen Moore noted that Milwaukee means land of plenty in Algonquin, I can't imagine I was the only one who thought of Cooper's scene in Wayne's World. Oh, this is written by a white guy. Wayne's World. Watching Congresswoman Gwen Moore talk about the origin of the name Milwaukee reminded him of Wayne's World? Oh, I'm not reading no more of this. He's out of touch. All right. Marlon Pitchford says, listening to the Pledge of Allegiance last night, what do you think of the last 4 lines? I think they are bull. One nation till the end. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And, oh my God, have I forgotten the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Oh my God, I'm embarrassed. And for one nation under... Do I not know the Pledge of Allegiance? How do I not know? I guess I haven't said it in 30 years. I'm Googling. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and all those for... I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did they take God out of it? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, comma, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They took God out of it. When did they do that? Did anybody know that they took God out of the Pledge of Allegiance? And this is from ushistory.org, which I'd imagine is a pretty official site. So here's another one from the state of Virginia. They have the Pledge of Allegiance listed on their website. The pledge now reads, so I guess they did change it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wow, they took God out of... Well, if you're going to take God out of the pledge, you're going to take In God We Trust off the money? That was embarrassing. I forgot the pledge. Alden Higgins says, thanks for the clarification on the Bernie support. You're welcome, Alden. Judy Brown, Black Caucus is also meeting on Wednesday. Vanessa Garrett finds something funny. She 3 laughing, crying emojis. Henry Leonard says, in the MPS Daily, God is still in it. I don't have a problem with that. God being either left in or taken out. And I guess even when you say the pledge, you can still say God if you want to, right? Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. That was my kind of all over the place and somewhat erratic coverage of the Democratic National Convention Day 1. Hope you tune in tomorrow so we can talk about the Democratic National Convention Day 2. Maybe it goes a little bit better than the first night. Maybe the production is a little bit more befitting of the city that was, in fact, supposed to host it, the city in which I broadcast from, in which I live, and a lot of you live as well, the city of Milwaukee. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.